I'm joined on this Google Hangout now by Vani Hari, who is the food babe, and she is joining us from North Carolina. Vani, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Vani, a little bit of background here. Now, you began calling yourself the food babe, or started the foodbabe.com, I should say, back in 2011. Tell us what you're about, why you do what you do.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I didn't come up with the name Food Babe. That was my husband, and I wanted to actually call the blog eathealthyliveforever.com, and he thought that was a really dumb name, so he came up with a better name. And so at first, I was a little reluctant to call myself the Food Babe, but I realized my site was more about creating food babes across the globe and really teaching people what I had learned about the food industry and how I was able to use this information to change my life dramatically. You know, I went from who was on 6 to 8 prescription drugs to zero when I started paying attention to the food that I was eating. And so everyone around me saw this dramatic transformation and wanted to know this information. So as I was working in the corporate world, I started a blog on my free time, and slowly but surely that ended up consuming my life. And last year I quit my job to take on the food industry full time and to really expose the secrets of the food industry so that people can make better informed decisions about what they're buying and what they're putting in their bodies.
So you recently turned your attention to Anheuser-Busch, who is the reason we're doing this is Missouri Net is based in St. Louis, and asked them to do something they'd never done before. Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I started to realize there was one thing in my fridge that I had no idea what was in it, and that was beer. And it was my husband's beer because he loves beer. And I would turn over the bottle and look at the label, and there was no ingredients listed. But I knew that there had to be like different formulas and different ingredients depending upon flavors and things like that. And so I wanted to know the truth. So I started to set out on an investigation to learn what was in beer. And some of the beer companies were really forthcoming with the information, and some weren't. And most of them actually weren't because they're not required by the FDA to do this. Actually, the beer industry is regulated by the Treasury Department, the same people that collect our taxes. So I realized there was a big disconnect here as far as how beer is regulated in this country. And I wanted to know the truth about what I was bringing in my house. And one of the first things that I found out was that Newcastle beer, which my husband loves, has caramel coloring in it, and I had found out that caramel coloring was considered a carcinogen in California, so we stopped buying that beer. And so I wanted to know about all the rest of the beers, and I found some basic information, but not a lot. And it was after 6 to 8 different exchanges, sometimes on email, and really digging on the customer service hotlines, that I was able to get any of the information I even have today. And so I thought this really needed to change. And there's been organizations that have been fighting for this for decades. And I felt like, if I had gotten enough people to support this action, I think this could have happened. So I started a petition on foodbabe.com/beer to ask Miller Coors and Anheuser-Busch, the two largest American beer companies, to post their ingredients online, because really we knew more about what's in Coca-Cola and Windex than we do beer, and that wasn't really fair considering that beer is one of the most popular ingredients in the world after water and soda.
And when you made this, well, part of the reason you make this request, I think people need to understand, is that and there are people who have all levels of concern about what's in their food, whether they should be or not. There's some people that really just don't care. But even those who are really concerned about it, if it's not right there on the label or if it's not easy for them to acquire, aren't going to put the kind of effort into it that you're saying you had to go through. So, I mean, was that part of your motivation?
Yeah, definitely. The type of research that I do and investigating I do, the normal everyday person doesn't have the time or sometimes even the knowledge to do because they don't know the right question to ask. And so I've been, gathering this knowledge, understanding how to research. And so now I'm fighting for the consumer to know this information and get this information out of companies. There's a long list of additives that the TTB allows in beer, and a lot of those additives are controversial or could have implications if you're vegan or vegetarian, like fish bladder that's been used for centuries to clarify beer. I'm not saying that that's a bad ingredient. I'm just saying that it is an ingredient and people should have the right to know. And also I found out that a lot of these beer manufacturers are using corn from biotech crops, which again, Monsanto is another huge company in your area. And a lot of us around the country are boycotting Monsanto because of the reason of all of the chemicals that they're putting on our farmland and our water and our soil, and the fact that they're trying to control food in the world, and also, they're going preventing us from knowing that they're doing this, and they don't want us to see genetically engineered ingredients on the label.
So after your petition received, it was over, what was it, 40 some odd thousand signatures?
Yeah, within 24 hours, we received over 50,000 signatures, but around the 40,000 mark, I received an email, a tweet, and a phone call from the head of communications at Anheuser-Busch, not only inviting me to St. Louis to do a tour of the facility and meet the head brewmasters, but also indicating that they are going to now release all ingredients on the website.
So as you talk about that, I'm going to pull that letter up here, and that was a fairly quick response, wasn't it?
Yeah, it just goes to show you the power of social media and the Food Babe Army, all of the people who came together to make their voice heard. These companies know that consumers are becoming aware of ingredients, and they did the right thing here. And I really applaud Anheuser-Busch's professionalism as they reached out to me. Certain food companies will try to hide the fact that they're changing their policies or their ingredients based on activism. They'll say, "Oh, we were doing it all along," even though people know there was petitions started and other things. But Anheuser-Busch was not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. They were telling the truth. They're like, you know what? We see this. We're going to do it. We acknowledge you. We're going to invite you to the headquarters. We want you to learn more about our beer. And I really appreciate that. Now, something that's happened since then is because Anheuser-Busch made this commitment, Miller Coors wanted to ride on their coattails and say, oh, well, we got to do it too. And Miller Coors has now said that they're going to release all ingredients, although they put like a random list of ingredients on like 6 of their beers on their Facebook page. However, they failed to disclose that the corn ingredient they were saying that was in most of their beers is actually supposed to be corn syrup by the FDA guidelines, and by even the Cargill documents that I have that show the specific adjunct corn syrup that they're using, liquid corn adjunct, I think is what it's called, that they say they're using. It's supposed to be called corn syrup on the label so consumers can easily identify it. So right now, Miller Coors has some things that they're still trying to hide, and I don't know why. And I think they're backpedaling right now, trying to figure out what the best way is to give us this information. I'd really like to see them come clean with the full set of ingredients, just like Anheuser-Busch has indicated to us that they're going to do. But furthermore, I would love to see the other beer manufacturers in America, like Sam Adams, which is very popular. It's getting a lot of popularity. I think it's #1, it's most popular beer in America now in 2014, and they also need to put their ingredients online. They can't, if these other two giants are going to do it, they also should, as well as all other beer manufacturers. We should have transparency into what we're drinking and buying and eating. There's no reason we need to continue drinking blindly in the dark.
So you would say then that the experience you've had with Anheuser-Busch since that petition has been a positive one then, and as you answer that, I'm going to pull up here what I found then after I discovered your story and went to their website, and yeah, the list of ingredients is right there. So I'm going to pull that up while you answer me.
Yeah, sure. They've only released the ingredients for 2 of their beers. I'm really looking forward to seeing it for all of their beers, because I know for a fact that some of their beers are using high fructose corn syrup, like Bud Light Lime. The customer service representative that I called last week finally revealed that to me after I don't know, half an hour of questioning. And then also Stella Artois is using some type of caramel coloring or caramel, and I'd really like to know what that ingredient is so that I can make sure that I'm avoiding these type of additives and people know that these ingredients are in there.
So what I'm looking at here, as you said, here's the Bud Light Lime, and right here is where you would have seen the ingredients on a couple of other beers. They've got them up now for Bud Light. They've got them up for Budweiser. This is where you want to see that. But they have said they're going to put the rest of those up.
Yes, they did say that in the coming days they are going to start doing that. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm not sure why they're not up right now. I mean, it would be a quick website change. I'm a computer scientist. I know how to do this information, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. I'd like to see them work pretty quick. I mean, honestly, they could do it in the blink of an eye if they want to. So I don't know what's really going on about why it takes so long to get the other flavors up, but I think it's some type of a PR game or something happening. But again, I'm suspicious because I see how these companies react, and I know how they want to hide this information from us. These are the same companies that lobbied the government to hide this information on labels. I would really like to see the government take the lead here and say, you know what? We need to have the ingredients labeled on beer just like we do Coca-Cola and other drinks that people drink. There's no reason why they should be not subjected to the same standards.
All right. So again, if folks want to see that, by the way, and go to Anheuser-Busch's website, I think that's the first page that pops up after you put your birth date in. And then the other thing I was going to invite people to do, if your petition is still out there, if folks want to sign that, and I'll pull that up here. But you still want people to sign that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I want you to show your support for this change. And I think the more support that we have at foodbabe.com/beer, we're going to have a bigger case to hold some of these other big beer companies accountable and continue to increase transparency. And I think if we get enough signatures here, the government might step in as well, which would be a fantastic change considering they've been asleep at the wheel for so long.
All right. So there is foodbabe.com, the website, and if you go to foodbabe.com/beer, that is the petition if you want to sign that. And now, are you going to take Anheuser-Busch up on their invitation to come visit their brewery in St. Louis?
Well, fate has it that I'm actually going to be in St. Louis in a couple of weeks for a wedding, and I told my family about what happened, and they're really excited about the news, and they actually want to join me. So I'm trying to figure that out. I don't want to crash their whole headquarters with my whole family, but I'm still trying to work out the dates, etc. But again, I'm always open to the invitation to learn more and to meet these companies because I think you can really influence change when you do meet with the companies that are producing so much liquid or beverage for the world.
What do you learn because you've met with some companies before, Chick-fil-A, I think you recently met with some of the people behind that company. What do you learn when you meet the individuals rather than dealing with what seems like this massive entity that's just out there?
Well, it definitely humanizes it, and I think that's their goal when they invite me in. But what it also allows me to understand is their perspective, and I'm always up for learning their perspective and their challenges. One of the things I learned really early on was that, like with Chick-fil-A, for example, the reason they couldn't go antibiotic-free overnight is because there just wasn't enough supply. So what they're doing, for example, is they're going to meet my number one demand that day when I met with them, they're actually going to work within their existing suppliers. So they're getting the Tysons and the Purdue's and all of those companies to change within, which I think actually in the long term might be better because not only are those big companies going to change within, but they're going to have more supply to feed the other fast food giants across the world antibiotic-free meat. And as you know, antibiotic resistance is a huge issue. It could wipe out the human race. The fact that our overuse of antibiotics is causing superbugs because 80% of the world's antibiotics is actually used on animals is a problem. And so we need to safeguard ourselves from that. And there's also all sorts of new studies coming out, too, that show that antibiotic use is linked to obesity in this country, that the same reason why you feed antibiotics to animals when they're born and they get fat is the same thing with us when we're little and we take antibiotics or we get antibiotics through the water supply or the food we eat. We can also have that obesity gene increase. So.
Now, you mentioned a concern that you have with the corn product that is in some other beers, Michelob, Coors, with the ingredients that we know so far about Budweiser, barley malt, rice, yeast, hops. Do you have any concerns about those ingredients at this point?
At Miller Coors, I'm not so much concerned about their ingredients. I'm more concerned about their transparency with their ingredients. I don't think we're getting the full story right now. So I'd really like to see the full story with their products. And once I have a chance to like review all of the new information that I get and the full ingredient list, I'm going to compare it with my notes that I was already researching and investigating this last year and see if it adds up. It'll be interesting to see maybe they start to make some ingredient changes because if they have to publicly disclose them, maybe they don't want people to know that they're using added flavors and other things. So I'd really like to have the opportunity to look at that data really closely before commenting.
All right. So Anheuser-Busch, a company that's been around in one form or another since 1852, you got them to do something they'd never done before. Congratulations for that.
Thank
And
you.
if
Well, the congratulations definitely doesn't go to me. It's really the collective group of people that I call the Food Babe Army, all the people that care about the food system and want to change the world for the better and increase transparency in the world. And really, I'm just one person, but the power really lies within all of these people coming together.
All right. Well, and if folks want to become part of that army, if you will, or see more of your work or sign that petition, again, they can go to foodbabe.com. The Food Babe has been with us today. Miss Vani Hari, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This is Mike Lear from Missouri Net.